Welcome back, everybody. We're only a couple weeks removed from the Stanley Cup Championship won by the Tampa Bay Lightning, but we already got some off-season news, a lot of it. Tons of transactions have occurred the last week or so. It's been very busy. So, Tradon, help us break it all down. What are the biggest moves that happened in the NHL free agency?
Yeah, so, the NHL has been busy for this week. I mean, I feel bad for the GMs. Usually they have a little bit of time between the draft and free agency, and they had days to prepare for both, and it was pretty crazy. I'm sure they haven't had much sleep. I'm sure their wives hate them because they're up all night. But, the draft started last week on the October 6th, went through the 7th, and then we had Fridays open up for free agency. Really weird because usually it's July 1st, but I guess obviously not this year. But it's been quite weird because, they're keeping the cap flat for the next few years. So it's squeezed a lot of teams into kind of a bind. They're having to, buy out players at a rapid rate. I've never seen this many players get bought out all at once. It was really crazy. Henrik Lundqvist, of all players, got bought out and now plays for the Washington Capitals. I mean, I don't know. That's the weirdest thing. I won't be able to imagine him without a Rangers jersey, and he's extremely loved in New York, and I feel bad for that guy, but at least he's going to still be able to compete. Braden Holtby went over to the Canucks, and then notable players like Kyle Turris was bought out and signed at very small contracts. I mean, contracts that are just teeny. That these players deserve so much more. The middle, I call it the middle class of players that really got their payrolls squeezed. More so than any other year I've ever seen. So with that said, I want to go through 4 big moves that I thought were huge. 2 of the biggest player free agency signings, and then the other 2 were left for our Ducks and Kings fans. I know that 3 of you guys are Kings fans, but I gave the one Kings draft pick to Eric. But we're going to start out with what the biggest free agency ticket was. And I was waiting for this, and I finally got it on, I believe, Sunday, or might have been Monday. I can't remember exactly the day. But Alex Pietrangelo, age 30, signs with Vegas Golden Knights for $61.6 million contract over 7 years, $8.8 million cap hit. The guy finally gets paid. This signing has a lot of bonuses baked into it, and they're all largely back-ended, and that's something that the GM at the St. Louis Blues refused to provide, even though this was their franchise defenseman. And he is a franchise defenseman and could very well be in the top 5, subjectively, of course, but I think he's a top 5 defenseman in the league, which is crazy. The Blues replaced him with Torrey Krug, who, in my opinion, is nowhere near Alex Pietrangelo, but at least he's a reputable replacement. But Tyler, I'm going to ask you a few questions. Are you surprised that St. Louis couldn't get a deal done with Pietrangelo? I mean, they were the only team that was able to extend him an 8-year contract. He got a 7-year contract with Vegas. Do you think that Doug Armstrong should have abandoned his view on the contract structure, to sign Pietrangelo? Or do you think that they probably saved a bit of money knowing they don't have to buy the guy out in the last 2 years of his contract?
Yeah, it's tough. If I was the Bruins fans, I'd be pretty upset that they could let this guy walk. I mean, this is your franchise guy, your captain, won you a Stanley Cup last season. Gotta lock him up, and it just sounds like it came down to the nitty gritty little details of the contract. They seem to be willing to give him the money he wanted, the years he wanted. It's just all about those bonuses and those kind of little details, kind of fine print part of it, which to me is kind of silly. I think you could have hashed those out. I think you could have easily got that deal done. But nonetheless, here we are. He's moving on to Vegas. But yeah, I agree with you. I think, Torrey Krug coming in kind of, kind of sealed his fate there in St. Louis. But yeah, I think it's a huge blow. It's not just a great player. It's your captain. It's the face of your franchise leaving, and that's a huge blow no matter what. It just there's really no replacing that. I don't know if they felt like just because they won a cup a couple years ago, they're like, okay, like we won the cup with this guy, we'll move on to the next. Seems silly to me. I think the Blues with this guy locked down could have easily had a lot more years to win another cup, but it's not how it worked out, which to me is unfortunate.
Yeah, I think it was unfortunate. I mean, that's another player I can't imagine him not being in a Blues jersey. He's one of my favorite defensemen out there. But on the other side, Vegas made a lot of moves to find space for Pietrangelo. They traded Nate Schmidt for a 2022 third-round pick. I think that kind of move is crazy. I mean, that's a really solid defenseman. You know, he's getting paid nearly $6 million a year and worth way more than a third-round pick. Obviously, it was a complete cap dump. But did Vegas give up too much to sign this defenseman, Tyler? I mean, are they going to get enough of that? Are they getting enough of an upgrade to justify this big payment?
I think yes. I think Pietrangelo is that good of a guy, and I think you can build pieces around him to complete that team. It may not happen for this upcoming season for all those pieces to come together, but you have this guy locked down for 7 years. He's, like you mentioned, one probably the top 5 defenseman in the league. I mean, that's a win for me, and I think this team is already very good. They made it, very far in the playoffs. They've been going deep in the playoffs the last few years. So this team's very good. And yes, they lost Nate Schmidt and Paul Stastny as well to clear some cap space, but that's just sometimes the moves you got to do with the whole cap rules. So, but for me, for Vegas, this is a win, even with the loss of a couple of those guys.
I tend to agree. What I love about Vegas and their GM, Kelly McCrimmon, he goes for it. They're wanting to win every year, and they're going to do anything they can to make that happen. And I think that's amazing. I wish every GM was like that. And then finally, last question: how do you think the Blues will fare without their captain and franchise defenseman? How do you think Vegas will fare this season? And are you more concerned as a Kings fan that Pietrangelo is in the Pacific?
Yeah, definitely not the guy you want to be facing in your own division as a Kings fan. I think for me, looking at both these two teams after the deal is over, I see Vegas getting better and the Blues getting worse. I do think the Blues are still very good. I think they're definitely a playoff team. But just overall the big names that change spots, that change teams, I feel like Vegas upgraded and St. Louis downgraded. But two very, very, very good teams still. Two teams that are going to be hard to beat no matter who you're playing. So
definitely. Well, thanks for that. Moving on to the next biggest fish that I thought was on the market. Taylor Hall, 28-year-old, signed with Buffalo Sabres for $8 million on a 1-year contract. I consider this more of a show-me contract, although I've never seen it at this high dollar value for a show-me contract, which is interesting. Hall has kind of been a nomad as of late. After being drafted by us in Edmonton in 2010, he's been shipped out for a 1-for-1 trade with Adam Larson. That's considered one of the worst trades in Edmonton history, to the New Jersey Devils. At the deadline last year, the Coyotes thought that they had a chance to win the Stanley Cup or at least be a contender, so they made a signing at the deadline. But they got caught tampering and actually got some picks taken away, and they're having to deal with kind of that issue, so they really couldn't sign Hall. So he walked and signed with Buffalo. But Taylor Hall is a perennial high scorer, 50-plus point scorer. He was awarded the Hart Trophy in 2018 season with the Devils. And after he single-handedly brought them to this postseason, in my opinion. And he'll be joining Eichel and Skinner in Buffalo for, at least this year. So, Alex, I asked you to kind of look up on this deal. What is your thought on Buffalo signing here? Does it seem like a solid risk for them to take, especially when you consider Buffalo has still over $13 million in cap space available?
Yeah, I mean, God, dude, hockey contracts are weird because like a show me contract for $8 million seems like nothing to me, being like a baseball fan, where like a show me contract in baseball could be like $20 million. But yeah, you pair with Jack Eichel. If you're the Sabres, Eichel is there's kind of been some rumors floating out there that he's not super happy with the direction the team is going. If you're Jack Eichel and the Sabres, you have to be pumped. You give Taylor Hall 1 year. If he shits the bed, then you're kind of like, well, okay, we're still a team on the rise. They're really young. They've had a lot of top picks within the last 5 years or so. So they're kind of working their way up. And for Taylor Hall, Jack Eichel is also a premier scoring talent. He just hasn't had much around him. Put those two together, And I agree with you. Taylor Hall had a down year last year after getting traded. Show us what you got. And then he's still pretty young. If it goes well, maybe Buffalo signs him for more money, or he can get a bigger contract next year, especially with the weird COVID thing going on.
Right.
I can definitely understand why he signed this deal.
Definitely. And I guess going into that, are you surprised that he didn't look for a longer term deal? I mean, this guy could get paid. And do you think it was a good move for him to bet on himself, or too much of a risk?
I'm a little surprised it's only a 1-year deal. I could have seen maybe like a 2 or 3 year deal. But I think a lot of these guys are just trying to make sure they have a guaranteed contract with this weird off season. You were saying that, the guys only had, the GMs only had, a week between all this craziness to get this all done. So yeah, if I'm Taylor Hall, that's still $8 million. That's a lot of money. Take the money, bet on yourself, show the league what you got, and you're young enough, you can still get a longer term deal next year.
Yeah, I actually think it was a smart move. The guy's going to get paid one way or another, and I think that you can only get better from here. My last question for you is, how did the Buffalo Sabres fare this year? And do you think the Sabres are actually going to be a threat with one of the best players in the league playing with the past Hart Trophy winner? And finally, does Hall play better with Eichel than he did with McDavid?
That second part is tough. I don't know. That's crazy, though, that he has played with both McDavid and Eichel.
Yeah.
I don't know if he plays better. I mean, obviously, Connor McDavid is probably the best player in hockey right now. I don't know. Nathan McKinnon might be kind of poking him in the butt with his stick, going, hey, what about me?
Yeah.
I think the Sabres, I don't know if they're like a cup contender, but I definitely think this pushes them closer to a playoff spot. The Sabres have not made the playoffs in a long time. If you're a Sabres fan, this has to be an exciting move. And I feel like Eichel and Taylor Hall are a good match. I would assume they wouldn't play on the same line to kind of spread that talent out. But I mean, who knows, kind of see how that goes. But I think they can, push for one of those wild card spots, one of those last spots in the East.
I hope so. I think the Sabres fans need something, because it's been very grim for them. Moving on, I know that this isn't a huge signing, but it is for our Ducks fan here. Kevin Shattenkirk, age 31, signed with the Ducks for $11.7 million for 3 years, for 3.9 cap hit per year. He's also been a nomad over the last few years. He was traded to the Capitals in 2017, signed a 4-year contract with the Rangers, and then they bought him out with 2 years left, I believe. And then he signed a 1-year deal with the Bolts last year, and then won a cup. He's been kind of a perennial 30 to 40 point defenseman, solid numbers for defensemen. Now, what has been questioned is his defensive ability. His plus minus has been negative in multiple years, so it's questionable. But he is known as a puck carrying defenseman, and he's been a solid pickup for teams due to his offensive ability on the blue line. He apparently wanted to go to Anaheim last year, but decided to play with Tampa. I think that was a good bet on his end. No offense, James. But James, the Ducks aren't locking up a lot of money annually to keep this guy, to get this veteran on the payroll. I mean, he's a strong offensive defenseman, Stanley Cup champion, and will be the second of your 2 right-handed defensemen on the blue line. How do you feel about this deal as a Duck fan?
I like it, man. I've liked Kevin Shattenkirk for a long time. Mainly because when I first started playing hockey or fantasy hockey, I wanted Shattenkirk on my team so I could name my team I Shattenkirk's Mouth. Yeah, that's my fantasy team name my first year. So that's why I liked him. So I picked him. And so I kind of followed him for the last 3 years, just kind of seeing where he's going. He had that shit year when he played for the Rangers after he got hurt. But other than that, he produces. And like you said, we needed a second right-handed defender that moves the puck and can hold that and has some offensive prowess. And that's what we got. The Ducks as a whole the last 2 years have been terrible offensively. They haven't scored at all, so this is definitely going to help them. I think the fact that he can push the puck up the ice, I almost said up the field, but up the ice is really good just because it gives John Gibson a break.
Yeah. I think they need some speed on the transition. I think this will help that. But one of the biggest issues with the SoCal teams, and especially the Ducks, has been age. The Ducks have been labeled as old and slow, and this move definitely does not bring the average age down by any means. Are you worried about that part of this deal?
Not yet.
Okay.
Just because 31 isn't that old right now, it will become 35. But there are some old defenders out there who are still producing, and he's still on the right side of 30. I'm not worried about it right now.
Yeah, and by the time his contract's up, he'll be that old, and you probably won't resign him then.
Exactly.
So how do you think your Ducks are going to fare this year? The Ducks have always had a strong blue line in my eyes. They may not be strong offensively, but defensively they've always been solid. And now they have a veteran with some playoff experience. However, Shattenkirk has been the kind of type of player that a contender goes to buy to bring on their team. You know, a team that is about to win, aka the Tampa Bay Lightning. So do you think the Anaheim Ducks are close to being a contender or are a contender for this upcoming season?
That really just depends on the play of the forwards. Like you've mentioned, the defense is good. And the goaltending is good, given a break or given some help from the defense. The offense is where it's killing us, and I think he'll help us out there. So ask me in 2 weeks into the season, and I'll let you know what I think. I just have to see how this works out. I got to see how they mesh, how the chemistry works, how the puck moves, and how they all look as a whole after not playing for so long. Because the Ducks haven't played in forever.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I agree with you. I think it's a low bet or low dollar risk to take, and I think it was a solid pick. Although they have no cap space, I think they're just
they have negative cap space right now.
Yeah, I think they just got to develop their new guys. Finally, Eric, LA Kings draft Quinton Byfield 2nd overall. He's a 6'4", 215-pound centerman who played for the Sudbury Wolves, the OHL team. He's from Newmarket, Ontario, and born on August 19th, 2002, and was one of the oldest draft picks available at the time. During his 2-year stint in Sudbury, Byfield played 109 games with amassing 61 goals, 82 assists for 143 points. A very solid plus-minus as well. And he scored a point per game in his one playoff season in 2019. They obviously didn't have a playoff season last year for obvious reasons. He also played in the 2020 World Junior Tournament, but did not have one of the strongest outings, and that's what kind of put people off. But I think obviously LA got over that. They say he's considered a tremendous skater and moves extremely well, and not just for a big man, like just overall, he was a very strong skater. He uses his speed and acceleration to play a transition style game and play a 200-foot game. He's skilled on his skates, and he's a big guy, and he's strong on the puck. He's also the highest drafted black prospect in the NHL history, passing Seth Jones and Evander Kane, who both went 4th overall in their respective years. Eric, this is big. You like big style hockey. This is a big style kind of hockey guy, right? Big size, but skilled with the puck, is the type of player that just like salivate over. They drool over this shit. His game often is compared to Evgeny Malkin. Stylistically, maybe not from a skill-wise. I'm not saying he's going to be Gino, but he has that style. Other options would have included the potentially speedier Tim Stützle, who went 3rd, and he's from Mannheim, Germany. Do you think this was the right pick for the Kings, and why?
What more do I need to say? I think you just covered everything about him. But no, I do think he's a great pick for the Kings. I also heard this guy has the confidence of a lion. Spit and Chicklets compared him to a current player in the league. There was a guy on there that does a lot of draft research. Ryan Getzlov, ever heard of him, James, was compared to this guy, or this guy was compared to him. Seems to be a versatile center, contributes both offense and defense. He has that defensive mindset that Kings preach, salivate, and get horny over that. And he's about to be learning from the multiple Selke Trophy winner, a guy named Anze Kopitar. Ever heard of him, Alex or Tyler? Of course you have. And another guy who he will also be learning from, Jeff Carter. Ever heard of him, Tradon? I do have a lot of high hopes for this guy. He fits the Kings' total style. I think I hope they can integrate him in pretty soon here.
Well, going off of, bouncing off of Anze Kopitar, are you excited? Obviously, you're excited to see him get mentored by, big man Anze Kopitar. Do you think this guy has the ability and the skill to become the new Anze Kopitar? perennial Selke finalist, face of the organization, kind of a big deal. Does he have that ability in him?
I'm going to give you the James answer. Talk to me like a month into the season after I've seen him play, because I'm not the biggest OHL guy. I don't really watch the OHL a lot or ever. So, I mean, I've just seen some highlight clips of him, but, comparing him to Kopitar being the face of the organization, all that, I will know in the future, but I'm glad to see that he will be, mentored by him.
And I guess that goes to my last question. The LA Kings have made small moves in this free agency period, adding some more depth, but kind of staying focused on developing their players, which I think is very important. They're obviously set to develop. Do you think Byfield cracks the NHL squad this year as early as game 1, or will the LA Kings keep it slow and keep him in Ontario for, a season or two, or even half a season?
Good question. I think they crack him game 1. Well, how old is he? Is he like 17 years old?
He's 18. He is 18.
Yeah, I mean, last year they had a couple. They had a D-man from Finland. I'm blanking on his name, but same thing. They cracked him game 1, paired with Doughty. So they do like to throw guys into the fire, just like get a little test run of them. Like they do both. They throw them in right away and then test them, see how it goes, and they usually bring them down to Ontario, develop them. But I think they throw them in pretty early.
I think that's a proper way to develop, and I wish luck for him, and I wish luck for the Kings. I think that there's something that you guys can bite on. I mean, I know it's been a tough couple years coming off those cup wins, and things have kind of been a little stale. And I think that a player like this brings some much needed, spark to the fan base and to the team. So I'm excited for that. Well, to finish off, I want to go around the horn and ask what everyone's opinion on the biggest story, or what the biggest signing is in your opinion. I know that obviously it's going to be a headline thing, but it's going to be quick. Tyler, what was your biggest signing, or what was the biggest storyline in your mind?
I think it's just all the goalie movements that's been going on. It seems like half the league switched their goalies in a week. It was absolutely insane.
I saw this little flow chart that showed like all the goalies that it was like musical chairs going around. Pretty crazy.
Is it crazy?
Alex, what about you?
Former King Tyler Toffoli signing with the Montreal Canadiens for 4 years. I thought that was an interesting move because Toffoli is, in the point of his career where he's a win now type of guy. Mm-hmm. And obviously the Canadiens sort of made the playoffs, as we want to call it this year. And we can. I thought that was interesting. Maybe they're kind of where the Kings are hoping to be, 2 years from now, where they're ready to start stepping it back up. But I thought that Tyler Toffoli move was interesting.
That is interesting. I'd love to see him play with my boy Kotkaniemi. James, what about you, man?
The biggest one was Henrik Lundqvist being bought out and going to the Caps. That marks the end of an era right there. Sad to see. That's a lot of history, a lot of years at one team. Yeah. So it's going to be weird seeing him in a different jersey.
Yeah, definitely. I was heartbroken for him, but I'm happy he's on a contending team. And what about you, Eric?
I'm going to keep the goalie theme. Braden Holtby to the Canucks. I mean, and then their fucking goalie Markstrom goes to the fucking Flames of all teams. In the same, what's with that division just trading goalies to each other? That's weird. But Holtby is a solid goaltender. Got a cup before. He's been deep in the playoffs, and the Canucks seem like they're getting to that Kings mode. They're getting to that playoff zone, like Alex is saying. I like Holtby with the Canucks.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see. I honestly, before I wrap up, I think that if the NHL couldn't get any more parity, it just got more parity because of COVID. I mean, the teams every team seems scary in their own right now. I'm not really, the only team I'm not scared of is the Ottawa Senators, and maybe the Arizona Coyotes, but that's two
Red Wings
32 or 31. I'm not really scared. I'm scared of every team, even the Ducks. I even the Kings. I'm scared to play them. I think the Sharks are going to be scary, although I think they made a stupid move. So
are you scared of the Oilers?
If I was any team in the Pacific, I'd be very scared of what the Oilers did this year. And I'm not saying that subjectively. I'm trying to be as objective as possible. They did upgrade their defense. They did upgrade their third line center position, and I would be a little bit scared that they actually have some depth scoring now. But we'll see. They do need to play some fucking defense. So we'll see. But with that, it was a busy week, long segment, but a lot to cover.
Thanks, Tradon. I think for Halloween, I'm going to send you a card of a picture of every team hoisting the Stanley Cup except for the Whalers. Just to scare you even more. So it sounds like you're pretty.
And not the Sharks either.
No. Well, who knows? But no, it's making me really excited for the upcoming season. I mean, we haven't seen our Kings play in a very, very long time. So I'm certainly excited. James, I know you're excited for the Ducks to come back as well. So everyone's back, or going to be back. But we're talking about the future instead of what's going on, so that's always fun too. All right, thanks, Tradon.